Right, I think we'll get started. Good morning, everybody. For those of you that don't know, my name is Laura Hodgkiss and I'm the Event and Training Team Leader here at Staffordshire Chamber of Commerce. And we're delighted to have the webinar this morning in reference to Newcastle and the Lyme Borough Council town deals and future high street funds. Very exciting things coming out of Newcastle Borough Council. So we're very excited to welcome today Simon and Elaine, who are going to be doing a presentation today. And again, don't forget that they will be answering any questions that you have at the end of the webinar today. Simon, Elaine, it's over to you.
Thanks very much, and good morning, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Thank you for inviting us to talk to the Chamber of Commerce this morning about what we're doing in Newcastle. This morning we'll be talking about the future high street funding that we've got for the town centre and for the town deal funding, which we've been lucky enough to get for Kidsgrove and for Newcastle. We'll give you a few more details on that. Just a few introductions. I'm Simon McKennany, and with me I've got Elaine Burgess, who's our regeneration manager here. I've been here just over 18 months, and I think Elaine's been in post just under 3 years now, running the economic and regeneration team, etc. And we'll take you through the what we think is really exciting, because as we take you through the presentation, Newcastle's received over £50 million worth of government grant funding through these two funding streams, which to all intents and purposes a life changer for the likes of Newcastle and Kidsgrove, and it is our duty to make sure that we spend this properly, but also innovatively, and creating aspirations and bringing future investment into the town, because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to transform our high streets and our town centres. So what we thought we'd do first is I'll take you through the future high street funding, then I'll hand over to Elaine, who's going to take you through the town deal projects in Kidsgrove. Then it'll be me again for the town deal in Newcastle, and then Elaine will take you through some projects that we've delivered through some advanced funding as well. It shouldn't take too long, hopefully, and if you've got coffee, buckle in, and if you're watching this on catch up, do not vote, because your vote will not be counted, but you may still be charged. And also they might be able to edit out some of the rubbish that I'm speaking about later. Anyway, so future high street for Newcastle. In September 20, we applied to participate in the future high street fund. It wasn't like the town deal where we were invited to participate in the town deal fund, but we had to apply for the future high street. And in January 21, after a series of processes that we had to go through, designing, costing up projects, business case, BCR submissions, etc. to government, in January this year we were awarded 11 million of the 16 million that we applied for. We were told to apply, the fund was up to a 25 million limit, and we were told not to apply for 25, which I probably wish we had done now, because some people did apply for 25 and they got 25. So we played by the rules, and we bid for just over 15, at 15 point something and nearly 16, because we were told to try and to bid between 10 and 15. Anyway, we were lucky enough to get 11 million, which is great for what we're trying to do, and what we will try and do. And part of the investment and the infrastructure developments that will go on will be trying to turn around the high street from the spaces that are created by decline, and empty retail units, empty office spaces, etc. And the aim is to try and turn the high street into a living environment again, by changing the uses of the high street away from retail, more into residential and leisure and cultural activities. So that's what we've tried to focus on. We've broken this is a map of our town centre here. I don't know whether many of you know Newcastle, but on the left-hand side, where you've got the upside down C, or what probably looks like an N from where you're looking at it, under the future high there, that's our existing site that we own called Rycroft, which is where the old civic offices were, which have been closed for several years, and we're just about to press the button to demolish them. That's the real focus of our attention in terms of regenerating that empty space. And to the south of that is where the old Sainsbury's used to be, and I don't know if any of you know Newcastle, but there's a new Sainsbury's that have been open about 5 or 6 years now probably, but the old Sainsbury's site was on the bottom of that site near the Civic building. And then we're trying to take the investment into the town centre to try and link that Rycroft, which is on the periphery of the town centre, link it into the town centre and the high street by some innovative demolition and rebuilding of some existing buildings, and then just reinventing the high street itself. And what I'll do is I'll take you through each of the sites so you get an idea of the scale and of what we're trying to do. So the first one, the backside, the Backward Sea, which is site development 1, that is for a new headquarter building for a company that we're working with, and they're going to put a residential facility around the back of that. So where the number 1 is, that's the residential. Underneath that bit with the little circle, the segment taking out of that triangle, the rectangle, sorry, is the headquarter building, and then the residential will wrap around. It's residential for downsizers, so 2-3 bedroom apartments, hopefully for people in their late 50s, early 60s. It won't be supported living with facilities on site, but it will be a managed facility where there'll be porters and stuff like that, but it's not necessarily an extra care or a care home facility. It's literally for downsizers to try and bring residents back into the town centre. We're going to try and get some parking in there underneath, etc. But where the building with the segment taking out of it, that's where the current civic building sits. We will be pressing the button on demolishing that next month, and it's quite a lot of asbestos in that building because it's, you know, from the 60s and 70s, and somebody's gone in and sprayed asbestos everywhere over it, so that needs to come out. So that'll take about a year to drop, and then in the meantime we'll be working with the provider that's putting the headquarters and their residential units there to try and master plan this whole site, to try and make sure that because they're going for quite a high-end aspirational design. They've got a national competition going on at the moment for an architect to try and make it a carbon neutral, you know, exemplary office building and residential development, to try and, you know, put something different on the map, which will be great, and we're going to try and support them in that. So that's the first site, and that'll be happening. As I say, we'll be demolishing the building over the next year, working up the designs, and hopefully starting this time next year on site with a new build, which will be great. The second site is we're not quite sure what to put on that, whether that'll be a further residential, or whether that will be some sort of commercial office developments, etc. There's been talk of some links with the college and the university about them maybe using some of that site, because what would be great is to bring some of the students from Keele and from the Newcastle College into the town centre for education, because we've got something like 20,000 university students and higher education students in the town, and we don't see much of them, in fairness. So that's another site that we've got, and the options about that are up for debate at the moment. Third site is a new multi-storey car park. We have an existing car park in the town centre called Midway. And if you've driven around Newcastle, because you can't drive through the town centre because it's pedestrianised, but if you drive around the ring road, there's like a concrete ring around it, and we can't get a view of the town centre or the high street from that road, which is a real disappointment to everybody in, because you can't see what's happening inside the town centre. So one of the things we want to try and do is poke holes through that concrete ring into the high street, and one of the ideas is to take down the Midway, which is like a massive, great big 1960s car park, which is deteriorating and needs a lot of money spent on it, and that will then create a large visible hole on the edge of the town centre, which we'll be able to see through, but also creates a new development site for probably residential, but also allows us to then modernise the car park offer in terms of safer, lighter, cleaner parking, you know, a modern parking facility with electric charging points, etc., maybe bus stops, etc. So that will then generate people coming into the town centre from the north and then walking through the town centre. Part of the vision that we've got for this area on Rycroft between these three sites is to try and punch holes, as I said, through the concrete ring into the town. So one of the next things that we want to try and do is deal with I don't know whether any of you know, there's York Place, which is at the bottom of the high street opposite the Cenotaph, which is literally, and both of our shopping centres in the town centre, the Roebuck and the York Place, have suffered from tenants leaving, so they're very empty and are suffering from market failure in terms of there just aren't people that want to rent in these places, so there are no visitors and the facilities are deteriorating. So what we're trying to do is we want to try and purchase that building, and we're talking to the owners of that at the moment, and we'll see how far that goes, to try and knock that down and create 2 new buildings, A and B, that you can see on that site, earmark number 4, with plazas going through it, which then link into plazas at Rycroft, and then that brings you into the town centre and the Iron Market and High Street. So you've got like a journey that you can go through, and it's a I've called them plazas, but what I'm trying to do is, part of the vision is that we've got a legacy from a chap called Philip Astley, who was the founder of the modern day circus. And what we want to try and do is emulate circus rings through the town. So further on down the town, I'll show you when we get further down the high street. But what we're trying to do is create circular plaza, meeting spaces, cultural spaces, entertainment spaces that are a series of plazas through the town centre. So by breaking up York Place and putting 2 new buildings in either side of a plaza, we think that we'll get a better permeability from the Rycroft, because we're trying to join that into the high street itself. This is what we want to try and do on the old Midway car park. You can see just under the number 5 there, you'll see that there's a road, which is the ring road. And if you imagine that at the moment is a large concrete 5-6 story ugly car park, we want to try and break that down and put some new buildings on there, whether they'll be residential or whether they'll be student accommodation or office blocks, yet to be decided. But again, trying to create a sense of permeability into the town, but also to try and break this concrete ring that we've got around the town centre, which is quite ugly. And this is just a visual of what it hopefully will look like, but we might not colour it exactly that, but that's the massing of what we're trying to do. And you can see where the 2 green buildings are. That's where York Place is. And if you come down into the town centre, you'll see that there's almost like a church-like structure that's in the town centre. That's our Guild Hall. And south of that, we want to try and deal with the market stalls that we've got. They're permanent market stalls, and they're useful because it's easy for the traders to come and trade from, but it's quite ugly when the traders aren't there, and they do cause some antisocial behavior with people just sitting on, in the evening and drinking and stuff. And what we want to try and do is on the lower end of the high street is try and create a green space with a entertainment or a leisure dwelling amphitheatre type thing that people can then sit on and dwell and have coffee and chat. We've got free Wi-Fi in the town now, so people will be able to work in the town centre, etc. So what we're trying to do is link those 3 blocks at the top through the green blocks into the high street. And as I say, we've got £11 million to do that. We've got partners to come on board to come and help us fund that. There'll be some of our own money going into it as well. And we'll be starting in earnest this summer to demolish the civic building, as I said, and we'll be starting construction of the car park hopefully next year, alongside the development for the office building and the residential units. I'm going to hand over now to Elaine, who will take you through the town deal and how we've landed with that particular funding stream, and take you through the Kids Grove projects. Elaine.
Morning, everybody. Town deal's been a process that's been going on for some time now. You can see there that it was originally announced in September 2019. Newcastle was fortunate enough to be invited to bid twice, so we had an opportunity to bid for Newcastle and also for Kids Grove. It is urban regeneration, planning and land use, but it was also looking at cultural assets and looking at health and well-being through green spaces as well, and looking at the long-term future of the areas that have been invited to bid. So whilst this is a time-limited scheme, we're very much encouraged to think long-term about the future of our places and how we wanted to transform them. You'll see at the bottom there's also a connectivity as well as skills and enterprise elements, and that will come through in the first one I'm going to talk about, which is Kidsgrove Town Deal. Next slide, thank you. So very early on, almost before we knew what we were going to be doing, we were invited to draw a red line area around where we wanted the town deals to be. So at that stage, we didn't know what projects we were going to be delivering. The guidance hadn't been fully published, so we actually opted to cast the net fairly wide. So for the Kidsgrove area, we went right up to the edge of Newcastle ward, down through the core areas of Kidsgrove Town Centre itself, Butt Lane, and all the way down to the A500 at Torque. So we encompassed as well the Chatterley Valley employment site, which had been designated in our local plan for quite some years, but has some issues around it, around viability. Next slide, please. So for Kidsgrove, we started in November 19. By January 2020, we had set up a town deal board because obviously we needed to work with partners and we need to cast the net far and wide. Over the subsequent year, then we were doing calls for projects, writing the bid and doing some baselining about what the needs were of the area and what the community wanted. So we submitted in October last year, and then there followed a series of clarifications and moderations. Similar to Future High Street Fund, whilst we were invited to bid for £25 million, there was no guarantee we were going to get that, and there was a scrutiny process that we had to go through. So in March, it was announced that we got almost £17 million allocated for Kidsgrove, which is just amazing because we've never had that sort of investment at all for the Kidsgrove area. The board had to formally accept that offer, which of course it did. And then because we'd bid for more than that and we needed to just look at the allocation of funds between the projects, the board had to go through a process of deciding where the priorities for investment were. And we've done that now. And unlike Future High Street Fund, there's a further hoop to go through. We did the programme overall, we did outlines of our projects, and what we have to do now is to work up detailed submissions, and we have 12 months to do that. So each project that we are putting forward has to have what's called the Green Book compliant business case submitted and approved before the funds get released. And that's pretty much where we are now with Kidsgrove. Next slide, please. So for Kidsgrove Town Deal, obviously one of our aspirations was growth, opportunity and enterprise. The primary area for that is Chatterley Valley, and I've mentioned before that that was one of the sites that's been in the local plan for years, but has viability issues around it. It really has the potential to release massive growth. As you can see there, almost 2,000 jobs could potentially be created on that site, but it does have high abnormal costs. There was marl underneath it. It's got 4 mining works there. It's on a slope, so there are some issues around bringing that forward and making it suitable for investment. For those of you that know Chatterley Valley area, JCB is on one side of the railway line. And then if you cross the railway line and go up the bank and that green area there, that's the area of Chatterley Valley that we're looking at developing. Next slide, please. Objective 2 was about accessibility and linking key assets. If you know Kidsgrove, you'll know that there's a little bit of a disconnect. The station's on one side of the main road, the town centre's on the other side of the main road. There's not really a good connection between the two, and the town centre is really quite well hidden from the as you go through. You may be aware that there was an existing proposal to do some improvements at Kidsgrove Station, which had been put forward by Network Rail and East Midlands Railways, and that was about improving accessibility at the building. So what we are doing, we are working with existing partners, so the 2 I've just mentioned, plus Staffordshire County Council, and we are looking at big improvements around Kidsgrove Station, a new station building, transport interchange, improved access over the Trent and Mersey Canal, which, as some of you may know, is currently impeded by a very narrow canal bridge, and basically bring it up to a fit for purpose modern station that can make best use of its potential links to HS2 when HS2 arrives in Crewe. The canal is right next door to Kidsgrove Station, and it has the potential to be a green route through the town. What we're looking at there is upgrading the towpath, improving the access, and also Harecastle Tunnel is there, and it is a heritage asset which maybe hasn't been made the best of. So if we can use the canal to connect better through the town centre, create a more pleasant environment for the people that are mooring there, and make it obvious to them where they need to go to make use of local facilities, then it just gives that little bit of extra footfall and something, a green lung really through the middle of Kidsgrove. The final project on this one is probably one of the more complex ones that we're trying to do in Kidsgrove. At the moment, there is a number of community facilities that are scattered across the town, whether it's the library, job centre, or access to services. We are currently talking to a range of partners about trying to bring those services into one hub. And at the moment, we've got the county council, some health partners, and various other people that we're talking to look at what that might look like. That will then lead to physical development. There's an area of land which is currently in public sector ownership. So we're looking at combining land ownerships together to create that hub, but then also in the process help to define a clear route through to the town centre, and to improve the look and feel of that route. So you'll have a revitalised Kidsgrove town centre, you will have the shared service hub, and then you will go through into the town centre itself. Apologies, Simon, I seem to have lost the presentation. So while I'm waiting for the presentation to come back up, the third objective was about health and well-being. This was very much about Kidsgrove Sports Centre, some link facilities, and also looking at Kidsgrove parks, because we are very fortunate in having some lovely parks in Kidsgrove, but they perhaps haven't been utilised in the way that they should have been. Kidsgrove Sports Centre, as most of you will know, was taken out of use when we developed J2 in Newcastle Town Centre. It was in need of considerable works to bring back into use. It had its day and it needed really refurbing to make it fit for purpose. The Sports Centre does, however, have a really big community connection. When it was originally built, there was a Buy a Brick campaign and local schools got involved. So we were aware that actually there's quite a lot of community buy-in and feeling to that building. And the community group has stepped forward to look at wanting to take on management of the facility going forward. So it will be run externally. But obviously the gap was we needed funding to refurbish it. We started some of that work through something called accelerated town deal funding, which I'll come on to later. So we started to strip out that building ready for the refurb work then. And then as we've had approval for the Kidsgrove town deal, the Kidsgrove Sports Centre project was fast-tracked through the process to try and release the funding as early as possible. So we could almost do a seamless approach to getting the building stripped out and getting the refurb started, and that's well underway now. With the parks on Clough Hall, there were a few issues there. The first one was the tendency to flood in the winter. The second was about the pavilions. There was an unused pavilion and there was another pavilion that was used but actually was in need of better facilities in there. So the first few steps we've taken on Clough Hall really were to demolish one of the unused pavilions, deal with some of the drainage issues in the park, so things like parkrun can use the facility all year round, and also then to improve the changing room facilities in the upgraded pavilion, introduce better kitchen facilities, and potentially look at bringing a community cafe into use there, linked to some of the surrounding facilities in the park. So there's opportunities for people to stop and spend time in the parks. I'll come back to Newcastle Recreation Ground in a short while. Next slide, please. Over to Simon.
That's apologies, everybody, if you saw your screens go blank. That's entirely my fault. And and well done to Elaine for plowing through. My machine stopped working, so I had to reboot it and everything. So hopefully you can all see now that we're now looking at Newcastle's area, which is, as Elaine said, when we had to establish the areas that we were talking about prior to submission of the bids, etc. This is the red line that we put around the Newcastle town bid. So we go out to Keele to the south and west of the town centre, all the way up to the A500, all along the north and down the eastern side. So Newcastle, we were running these two, Newcastle and Kidsgrove, in parallel when we first started. But because we were worried that we weren't quite sure what we would get from the future High Street bid that we were talking about earlier, we decided to push back the Newcastle town deal bid submission a couple of months to see how much we got from the future High Street, and if we didn't get anything that we required, we would then be able to substitute it into the Newcastle town deal bid. So we put the bid in for Kidsgrove in October, but in Newcastle we put that in at the end of January. It's a similar situation to Kidsgrove in terms of questions, clarifications, etc. And then yesterday we put a bid in for 25 million, and then yesterday we were awarded 23.6 million, which we were absolutely delighted for, because that's only 1.4 million off our ask. So we have got till the end of June to confirm that, and then we'll go through a similar process in terms of working with MHCLG around which schemes that we'll be taking forward, how much we will be allocating for each scheme, working up designs, costings, working through the Green Book assessment, etc. So the schemes that we put forward for Newcastle, first off, addressing disadvantaged communities. We've got work ongoing in Nutton and in Chesterton, which is next door to Nutton. Nutton was we did a master plan exercise with the County Council and Aspire through the One Public Estate funding recently, which has been adopted or will be adopted by the Borough Council in the next few weeks. And that is to identify which sites will have investment in for terms residential, or whether there's going to be some commercial activity, etc. But really bringing up the areas of Chesterton and Nutton, which have not had any type of investment and have had significant infrastructure closing. So, you know, retail shops and have closed, leisure centres have closed, community centres have closed, etc. And it's about bringing new life into the area. We have got 3.7 million for Nutton, which will unlock several sites, and then we're also talking with Aspire, who are working in Chesterton. Have got a development on Cross Street, which will also, as a feasibility issue, we'll be able to plug, and then we can bring those schemes forward. We're all part of the bid was also to try and get some new walking and cycling in. We're trialling e-scooters at the moment. One of the borough councils that have been selected across the country to do that. We're doing that with in Staffordshire with Stafford, and ourselves have got looking at alternative means of travel and getting people to work, to and from home, etc., out of their cars, and particularly as COVID has suggested, people are using less public transport and then using their own transport, and it's trying to get them out of their cars, etc. So improving our walking and cycling infrastructure is seen as a key objective to doing that activity. Also, we've got some key gateway sites. Zanzibar site is an old nightclub on the way in from Stoke. A lot of people that grew up in Newcastle know it as, it has various different names, but Aspire bought that and they've demolished it, and we will be putting some money into the redevelopment of that, and also the Borough Council will be investing in that directly with some live workspace units around the back of their Aspire's residential units that they'll be putting on that site. So this deal will be supporting the feasibility problems with that. And then one of the most interesting and probably exciting things that we do have, which we thought might be knocked back by government, if we're honest, but as I mentioned earlier, the legacy of a chap called Philip Astley, which is our, who invented the modern circus, who was born in Newcastle in the 1700s, very popular in London, likes of Barnum, etc., have all had a nod to Mr. Astley, etc. So what we want to try and do is to create a circus school and a performing arts centre in the town centre, which will have a research library, a training facility, a performance space, etc., to really develop circus skills across the country. Now, there are several of them around the country, but that we don't believe that there is a actual centre for the circus. So we're trying to do that as well. We've got several million set aside for the establishment of that facility. So that'll be quite interesting, because we don't think anyone else has got one of those. We are also looking at a very, very, I think they call it uber fast gigabyte internet infrastructure to the town centre, which is, as you can read there. But this is a company in Sweden, from Sweden, are currently in Stoke, and they're putting a ring around our concrete ring road, which I talked about earlier, to try and get uber fast broadband into the town centre. So we can attract new businesses, new creative digital startup companies, etc., to base themselves in Newcastle, because we'll have some of the fastest broadband in the country, which will link into some of the other things that we're trying to do with the university and the college. They're calling Digital Society, which is teaching and research into digital skills. The university at Keele are already progressing that, and are working with the college here to try and create a research centre and a teaching centre that into new digital skills. So we're going to try and support that as well. That is a very quick overview of what we have to do in Newcastle. There's obviously we've got a responsibility to spend that money wisely and lever in additional investment. But what we were also fortunate to do, and I'll ask Elaine to take us through this, but prior to either of those awards for Newcastle and Kidsgrove being awarded to us last summer, we were offered 1.75 million, $1 million for Newcastle and $750,000 for Kidsgrove, as an advanced town deal, because I think we were rewarded for the blue wall, but that's fine. So we had till the end of March to spend 1.75 million, which we've done, but I'll let Elaine take you through what we've achieved with that money, if that's all right, Elaine.
Thanks, Simon. Yes, it was an interesting year. Our town deal boards not only had to develop the long-term plans as well, but also decide how to spend the money. And it was a good test in mobilising, actually, to be able to quickly deliver the projects that we needed to. Starting in Newchapel Recreation Ground, there you go. If you follow the council's social media feeds, you'll see that there's quite a lot of excitement already around this. Newchapel Recreation Ground was a somewhat unused area of ground with an informal pump track on it previously. We're in the process, and it's very shortly to open, of developing a more formal facility. If you go onto the council's Twitter feed, I think yesterday they posted a video of somebody riding around on it. Even though it's not yet finished, I think there's going to be queues of people trying to get on there and use it. So there's a lot of excitement about that particular project. Next slide, please, Sam. Cheers. Also in Kidsgrove, and again linked very closely to the redevelopment of the sports centre. King's School have developed 3G pitches there, and there will be community use agreements on them, so they will benefit both the community and the school itself. So again, part of the drive for health and wellbeing in Kidsgrove. Next slide, please. Going up to Norton, again, if any of you use that area, you'll be aware that there was the former community centre by the double roundabout at the top of the bank, and linked to that a redundant NHS building as well, which both were more or less falling into dereliction and needed to be cleared. So we've cleared the site now, and you can see the before and after there, so it's all ready to go for the next development. In Newcastle, Simon's getting overexcited about subways. If any of you have used the subways in Newcastle, you'll see the most beautiful artworks appearing. We are starting on the Grosvenor roundabout. We are doing retailing all the entranceways and the barrels to celebrate our In Bloom connections and to celebrate Newcastle's green connections. And there's also an associated project down on the Bridge Street subway where, again, there's further artworks going on there. But as the year goes on, we've still got some tiling to do on the other subways, but we'll be transforming those routes into Newcastle into really quite attractive places to walk through. In the centre of the town centre, inside Lancaster building, there was a former jewellers called Pikes that had been stood empty for quite a number of years. We have worked with a number of partners through the Newcastle Employment and Skills Group, and we're creating a hub in there for employment and skills provision. And it's designed to be a very friendly, easy to drop in place where people can get advice and guidance, access training, access ways of volunteering and accessing skills upgrading, just to complement existing provision, but also to start drawing people in. You know, in a post-COVID world, the employment sector is going to be changing. We need facilities like this for people to be able to access, to know where to go to for advice and guidance. Thanks, Simon.
And that's it. Apologies for my poor IT skills. I thought we had other pictures of the subways and what the building in Lancaster, the unit in Lancaster building looked like. So that's why I was racing ahead. So apologies, Elaine, if I put you off and if that upset anybody's viewing. That's our presentation. If anybody's got any questions they'd like to ask us, we've got our email addresses there if you want to email us later on. But we're happy to take some questions. I'll stop sharing the screen now and I'll hand back to the chamber.
Hi, fantastic. If you have any questions, there's two ways you can do it, as I said earlier. Pop your question in the chat, or if you want to raise your virtual hand, which you should be able to do at the bottom as well. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions. Richard Watts. Hi, Richard.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Elaine and Simon, for that presentation. Very interesting. Obviously, Simon, Elaine, we've obviously met, and we've talked about technology for Newcastle and Kidsgrove. So I suppose that my question is what's your process now on engaging with partners, suppliers, people that can help navigate how you allocate and work with people like ourselves in terms of investment and collaborative working, and what's the structure for that? Because obviously we want to make sure that we jump on board and work with you.
I'll take that one. What we have to do now with the town deal boards is we have a governance structure set up where there's the town deal board itself, which is the decision-making body. But underneath that, each of the projects will have a subgroup, and it does sound very bureaucratic and stuff, but that's where we'll get the partners and stakeholders involved to shape each of the projects that the funding will be allocated to work up the plans and work up the business cases that will then be approved by the governance at the town deal board and then submitted into MHCLG. So the links that we've made through the formulation of the bid with the suppliers or stakeholders, for example, or the landowners or the service providers, etc., will then be called back into these subgroups now, because we've had the funding confirmed, and we've got, as Elaine highlighted, we've got 12 months to work up these schemes into some sort of business case worthy submission in. We won't be doing we will be doing them in a phased, priority. We'll have to establish which ones we need to do first, and that will be based upon which projects we have most information on at this point, so we can do them in a phased approach. And then by the end of the 12 months, we've got each of those submitted. Rather than trying to do all 7 or 8 of them all at the same time, because we'll just never be able to cope with that. So the likes of yourselves for the digital infrastructure, you'll be hearing from us shortly to participate in how we take this forward. Thank you for that, Simon.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Richard. Just checking in the chat just to make sure if there's any questions. No questions in the chat. Has anybody else got any questions for Simon or Elaine, just about in reference? Patrick?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Elaine, Simon. I'd like to ask really about local procurement strategy with these Grange projects, if you like. Very exciting to hear news of town centre regeneration projects, both in Kidsgrove and in Newcastle town centre. Elaine, you may remember years ago we were involved in the revitalisation of the High Street, but sadly it got pulled due to lack of funding. I was wondering, is there a prospect of this being revitalised as a project, as an on-the-shelf scheme there in some respects? But more interestingly, what is your local procurement strategy? What are the opportunities for local professionals and construction companies to be involved? And who to date has been involved, to be quite honest, because I've not seen any notices of opportunities being advertised, although I may well have missed it.
I'll answer that one. Thank you, Patrick. Part of the, as I said, we've got to spend this money responsibly, and part of that is bringing the money into Newcastle and Kidsgrove. What we won't be doing is spending money with consultants in Manchester, Birmingham or London and shipping them in. We want to try and spend as much money as we can locally. So for example, the contractor that is working on Kidsgrove Sports Centre, for example, is a national contractor, but part of his remit, or their remit, is local spend, where we've got high percentages of local spend and local employment, etc. In terms of opportunities to date, because it's been quite specialist in terms of pulling the bids together and the business cases, there aren't actually a lot of, or any, local consultancies or engineering companies, design companies that have been able to help us with the submissions, but we only employed those consultants to undertake the bid submission. We're taking everything ourselves forward. So what we will be doing is we will be employing some new project managers internally to try and take those projects forward, and working with our procurement colleagues here and the chamber, and this is one of the reasons why we're presenting today, is to get the awareness of the program of work that we've got, so that we can have conversations with local businesses and employers, engineering companies, construction companies, labour, supply companies, supply chain, etc., so they've got an understanding of what projects will be coming up over the next 2 to 3 years, and they can engage with us, and we'll do meet the buyer events, we'll have social media activity for links on our own web pages, etc. But trying to get the word out, and this is part of this process, as I said, to try and get people interested and engaged with what we're trying to do, so they can get themselves ready for it. So it's very much of the hope that we spend a lot of money with local companies. I'm not aware of the site that you were talking about, or the project you were talking about, Patrick, that you alluded to, that Elaine might be able to come in on that one, or we can have a conversation separately about that. But apologies, I don't know, you weren't specific about what it was, but we can answer that offline if you wish.
Hi Simon, no, it's fine, I can step in on that. The public realm element of Future High Street Fund, I suspect, Patrick, unfortunately we won't be able to revive the previous scheme, but we will be looking at new ways of delivery, and just trying to look at what we can do with the funding that we have available and the scope that we have available. So again, that will be something that we need to take a fresh look at and take forward, because the schemes are now coming through as slightly differently. We delivered some elements of the schemes before, so we were able to close Hassel Street and do some of the public realm areas around the market. But I think it's now looking at what needs to go into the future and be aspirational for the uses in the town centre.
thank you. That's I'd like to try and make contact with both of you in due course to see how we progress that. Thank you.
Brilliant, Patrick. Thank you for the question. Just noticed, just having a look, see what other questions we've got. Darren.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you fine, Darren. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm mostly interested in the Newcastle plan as a local resident. And in particular, what I wanted to ask, that, you know, any money that goes in there, any development will be great. But the reality is that people come into town centres for retail, for hospitality, for those things. And there's definitely a decline in retail, and especially in larger retail organisations that find it difficult trading with, you know, in face of online competition. Well, if you go around Manchester and Birmingham and London in the high retail areas, then generally they're filled by lots of independent shops or independent retailers. But what they'll need in Newcastle is almost like a free trade area or low rent schemes within that side. So when I'm looking at schemes that are developing things into extra housing and extra space on those sort of sides, what is going to be done to actually make the experience in there and to try to encourage a town to still be in the area of retail, because we are a market town as well, on that perspective. And just off that side, the second question was really, whilst anything innovative may be great, sometimes there may be a reason why nobody else has one of those things. It might be because that, there isn't the need for that there. And it was just, where was the thinking into that, or the research that such a thing as a circus performing arts centre, for example, would have benefit over, for example, a free trade area for independent retailers. So it was really to see where the deal was going with that, to actually encourage the footfall rather than just the development of a few rundown areas. Thank you.
I'll take that. The whole purpose is to generate activity in the town centre. It's to bring people back into the town centre and to take away some of the oversupply of the empty retail units. Newcastle itself there are very few national chains. It's a lot of independent retailers. We've got a successful bid which has just been reconfirmed, so they are working with the businesses in the town centre to try and generate that. Business rates and free trade stuff, that's a very different conversation around how that might happen, because that's not part of the deal per se, but it is around it's the chicken and the egg. Independent retailers will come into town if there is activity in the town and there are people pounding the streets and you've got passing trade, etc. One of the things we are trying to do is through the market and the independent traders that are on that market, and the artisan markets, the specialist markets, etc., and the activities that the bid will be putting on and the cultural events, etc., is to generate footfall into the town centre so that retailers have an opportunity to trade, but also the confidence to take on units. So some of the traders on the markets may well step up and take a retail unit, and part of the offer is to smarten up that market offer and smarten up the town centre so that people when they do come in, they've got a good experience of parking. We've got free Wi-Fi, as I said, so people can come in and use that Wi-Fi at no charge across the town centre in every coffee shop or on the town, and sitting on the benches and the amphitheatres we're trying to create, etc. So the investment is very much trying to generate footfall into the town, and it's not just about residential unit, taking out retail and putting residential in. That's one of the jigsaw pieces that we're trying to create, because more people in the town centre, whether they're working, living, visiting, trading, etc., that all creates a buzz, and that's our part of the remit we're trying to do. And in terms of the circus school, that is one of those suggestions to try and bring in more people, because if you have a visitor centre and it's it'll be marketed, it'll be social media presence, etc., people will be coming in for training, they'll be coming in for performances. Want to try and generate footfall by having something different in the town centre, which is around, again, as I say, bringing people into the town. And the group that are behind this, you know, they've got industry legends. You've got the Van Buren family, we've got the New Vic Theatre that are involved, we've got a lady that runs a similar type of activity down in London that is consulting on this as well. So we do believe there is a need, and it all comes back to getting people back into our town centre, so it breathes life into it, and traders have the confidence to trade. And on the back of independent traders, we may well get some of the big names back into the town, but as you know, retail across the whole country is struggling, and this is one of the things we're trying to address. And there's no one project or activity that will solve that, but we're trying our best to try and to regenerate it with some innovative but also some tried and tested methods.
Brilliant, Simon, thank you very much. Brilliant. Is that okay for you, Darren? I guess so.
Yeah, thank you. I don't underestimate the size of the challenge, and it's multifaceted. But no, I was encouraged by the response. Thank you.
Brilliant, fantastic. And we've got a couple of other questions, Simon and Elaine, so I'm just going to try and get to them as quickly as possible. Chris Daniels. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, just have to get my microphone
No,
tapped
that's all right, don't worry.
Simon, just literally off the back of what Darren was saying there, in relation to the circus, and what you were saying about wanting to bring innovation to Newcastle and tap into some of the technology. There's a few technology businesses here today. And I was just wondering if any thought had actually been given to retrofitting the idea of a circus and a creative studio to actually turn it into some sort of digital creative hub, tapping into Keele Uni, the colleges in the area, using the expertise to actually retrofit it to some sort of a digital business startup hub, where we can actually bring some people using technology into the town, increasing footfall, increasing digital technology presence within the town, and maybe getting that going. I was just wondering if that was an option or an idea, maybe obviously not now, but in the future there we can actually tap into technology, tap into business, and tap into education all in one good stroke.
No, that's absolutely what we want to try and do, Chris. I don't know whether you'll be aware of the Baltic Triangle up in Liverpool, but it is a very similar type of space where entrepreneurs and startups can hire literally wooden sheds in a particular unit, with, you know, the infrastructure, office support, admin support, cafe, meeting room space, etc. And I think there is a possibility that the facility that we're trying to create for the Circus and Performing Arts Centre, there is very much enough space for that type of activity. And that was one of the things that we were trying to try to encourage in one of the developments that we're taking forward. So absolutely, yes, we do want to try and do that. I might have to speak to you about how we do that, because you know, if you know how to do it, come and help us, because we don't have all the answers. We've never done anything like this on this scale before. I mean, it's good old fashioned regeneration, which is very, very exciting, but we do have to have a nod to the fact that businesses, startups are all very, very different. And, you know, if we've got this uber fast broadband, that's exactly the type of activity in creative industries that we want to try and attract in. So please do contact us, and we will try and pick your brains and see how we make that work, because I do think it's got some legs. Thank you.
No problem. I was going to say, testament to get what you guys are doing, same as what Richard and Darren were saying. Might be good to actually get a bit of a group together and have a little brainstorm.
Absolutely, yeah, that'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. I think we've got time for just one more question, Simon and Elaine. Just from Rossi's just put a question in the chat. Demand for housing nationally, particularly since COVID hit, points to a trend towards suburban living with larger gardens, home office facilities rather than town centre downsizing. How will this trend impact your plans for the Rycroft site?
I think that the housing market is going through a readjustment in terms of home working, etc. And it's interesting to see, you know, when the pandemic hit, a lot of people, although we were all forced into home working, a lot of our staff, for example, were very worried about isolation and working from home and technology and not, you know, the right furniture, for example, etc. And I do know that, you know, people are moving out of cities now and, you know, trying to get into the countryside because broadband, etc., which is fine. There's always going to, but there will always be somebody that isn't working, perhaps is, you know, retiring and wants a place, you know, for 6 months of the year, and they go somewhere else for 6 months of the year, or that they're not able to look after a garden, or they are just starting off on their housing journey. And hopefully, if we've got a great town centre with good energy, you know, good bars and restaurants, etc., for the evening activities, and you know, but close links to weekend activities, etc., we might be able to get some younger people into the town as well as older people. So we've got a range, and it's about providing that housing offer and doing some real research as the market changes. Is to say, you know, one bedroom studios, etc., they aren't probably the way forward for the residential offer, but a 2-3 bedroomed apartment with a decent terrace or decent outside recreational space might be something that people will want to buy into. But it's going to have to be, it's changing much faster and in many ways that we didn't think possible 14-15 months ago. So we do have to keep an eye on it. But it is a good question. We don't want to create white elephants.
Absolutely, fantastic. I think I've hit all the questions, Simon and Elaine. Thank you for everybody that's attended today. Really appreciate it. Like I said, if you missed any of it or you missed the first part of it, a recording will be on our chamber website later on, either today or tomorrow. I just want to say a massive thank you from to Simon and Elaine. Amazing presentation today, and really informative and really exciting things coming out of Newcastle. So really, really great. For those of you that don't know, we will be doing a quick poll now. It is a 30-second poll, and it's literally just 3 questions I need you to ask, and they'll just be coming up on your screen just now. So Lucy, if you're there, can you just pop the polls up on the screen for me?
You didn't tell me there was a voting system.
It's literally 30 seconds. So hopefully Lucy will pop the polls up for me. I'm hoping you can all see the questions. Can you all see the questions? I'm hoping. Yes,
yes they can, Laura. Yeah.
Well, I can't see it on my screen, you see. So they're just 3 questions that you just need to answer before you go today. Brilliant, fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you all with us today, and I hope you have a lovely Wednesday afternoon. Bye for now. Thank you, everyone.